as I mentioned, is a group of about 15 people or so that's been meeting for the last few weeks to explore what might comprise a faith for today, able to sustain us and empower us in the face of the issues and the context of our time in history. And from our conversations, this morning's sermon has been drawn. So if you want to talk about any of the sermon content, find one of those people who were singing. From the conversations, however, it has clearly come to mean letting go of most of the doctrinal statements that have comprised a right faith until fairly recently. We're giving consideration to what we might put in their place. Our work together is provocative and a little scary, but it's serious theological work that is unsettling for many of us. It's hard to let go notions, words, images, and metaphors that we've held since childhood. Things like God the Father, who will forgive us and judge others, who will reward our efforts and respond to our prayers, who will fix things when we get them wrong. Things like the Son of God who died on the cross to save us, and even the angels who might watch over us. And over the last couple of weeks, we've been considering our theology and our faith in the light of the current climate crisis. Because this crisis now shapes our time in history, and our theology and our faith must speak to it and offer us resilience to face it. And so we ask, who are we? Who are we humans? And who now is God? We haven't found the definitive answer yet, but the question has to be asked. In one First Testament story you'll be familiar with, found in the book of Exodus, from about the 15th century BCE, Moses asked God what his name is, so he'll know what to tell those who ask. God's reply is translated as, I am who I am. Though these days it is thought, I will be who I will be, may be more accurate. The latter shifts the idea of God from being a finished being to an unfinished becoming, to a God always in process of becoming in response to the needs of the people and the times, whether that be from swarming locusts or plagues, droughts or floods, war or famine. So we ask, who are we humans? And who now is God? We know that we are consumers of the resources of the earth. We are the big consumers. And we inherited a theology that set us on that path long ago, along with stories that gave us dominion over all the earth and over all the earth creatures. We assumed all the resources of the earth were for our use and benefit. Those of us from the religious tradition that became known as Christian, that is. We humans produce nothing. We contribute nothing of substance to the well-being of the earth's life-sustaining cycle until we die and we decompose. Apart from that, we fool ourselves with notions of creativity and our capacity to produce things. But in reality, we translate, transform, or transmute the resources of the earth from one substance or thing to another by application of our amazing imagination. Everything we use is sourced from the substance of planet Earth, from the plants that convert carbon and minerals into food, from the rocks and soil, from sand and water, from the metals and carbons under the earth. even our very selves, in all our amazing complexity, are made from the substances of the earth. Humans from the humus. As Sally McFaig says in her book, A New Climate for Theology, we are born of the earth, and the earth will be our tomb. We are of the earth. We belong to the land, as Maori wisdom suggests. It does not belong to us. Paul declared to the people of Corinth who were struggling from their different experiences to understand who this God of his that he was speaking about could possibly be. And he says to them, in whom we live and move and have our being. Many notable theologians have pondered this image of God, in whom we live and move and have our being. What could it point us toward today? Who are we? And who now is God? We are of the earth and not separate from it. We are not different in substance and are totally dependent on it for our living. So what of God? Of the earth too? Do we live and move in God as fish move in the sea? What can we expect of God then, or of ourselves in the face of the climate crisis? There is little doubt we humans have created the crisis and continue to exacerbate it with the carbon emissions we're still pumping into the atmosphere. The earth can no longer clean up our mess at a fast enough rate to ensure our well-being. Eventually, acid rain will make its impact. Droughts and floods affect food supplies. Air pollutants, including pollen, will affect our breathing. All these things we are seeing and experiencing already. And as Nikki Bezant says in the Herald this morning, there are no healthy people on a ravaged planet. So who are we humans? And who now is God? There is a thread in our Christian story that differs from the dominant dominion over story, with its location of humans as the pinnacle of God's creation and the suggestion that we've wholeheartedly embraced that the world and all it is and all that is in it was made for us. The other thread suggests living well together, respecting and caring for each other, and caring for the earth. We're not too keen on this alternative thread because it goes against the grain of all we've been told for the past 400 plus years, culminating in post-war consumerism. You know, the one that says, I am important and I deserve all I can get. The individualistic theology and the concomitant psychology has worked to separate us from each other and to put boundaries around ourselves and our possessions. We have divided up the earth and set boundaries around bits of it for the individual possession of those who have the money to buy it or the means to patrol the borders. As nations, we're even setting boundary markers in the oceans and claiming it for our possession. We have turned the generous earth into commodity to produce profit for our individual selves instead of food and commodities for the well-being of communities. The thread of our story the second thread of our story that we must reclaim is that we are mutually dependent on each other and with the earth. That the struggle for justice includes justice for the earth. That it is in God that we all live and move and have our being. To this end, our endeavours demand we stop privatising and start commoning, to use a phrase I heard at a lecture last week. And the protesters at Ihumātao are an example close to home offering this wisdom. Our imaginations must turn from how we accrue private wealth to how we share common wealth. This is possible if we give deep consideration to the questions, who are we and who now is God? Theology's cause is to help us shape meaning, value, and purpose, to shape the questions and ideas that will guide us to living well together, and to help us understand who we are and a little more about God. The wisdom of our Christian heritage offers us a way of looking at all this. It offers us a lens through which to look when searching for how we can live well together. The Jesus story suggests the lens should focus on all humanity, all living well together in harmony with the earth, and not only a rich few or the nations with the most powerful military force able to dominate others and secure borders. Perhaps, as Christians, one of our key contributions to today's climate crisis is to actively promote this other vision of a world in which we all share in a sustainable earth. It will mean some of us will have to consume less. It will mean knowing ourselves as part of the whole. It will perhaps mean knowing God as the matrix of all that is and in which we live and love and have our being. As one member of our group said, life within life. When preaching, the common wisdom is never to give the last word to someone else, always to keep it for yourself. But this morning, I want to give my last word to a powerful prophet, not a familiar prophet from our past, but a prophet from our future. I want to give the last word, as it were, to Greta Thunberg, a 16-year-old Swedish climate crisis activist. To paraphrase what she said when addressing the United Nations leaders at an assembly on climate, she said, "I don't care about offending people or being politically correct. I only care about the survival of the Earth's capacity to sustain life for future generations." I'm not worried about doctrinal correctness, but rather the well-being of planet Earth and all who inhabit the earth, human and non-human. I'm concerned that we might all live well. And so I invite you to ask, who are we humans? And who now is God?